There are kids in this world who are different, special.
In this episode, I'll be breaking down the 28th episode of 6 Minutes Season 4, piece by piece. Well, hello, Review Pop listeners. It's your host, Landon Mueller.
Now we are here today to talk about episode 28 of 6 Months Season 4, called Heading Out for a Helicopter Ride.
And we are joined here by the co-founder of GZM Shows,
Juno Award-winning musician who's been composing music for years, and co-host of GZM Rewind, Chris Tarry. Hey Chris, how you doing?
Hey Landon, how are you? Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be on your show. Oh, what's new? We're just always working away here at GZM on a bunch of new shows, and so we're just we're getting close to releasing a couple of new ones that we'll be able to talk about probably soonish in the next few weeks. So yeah, it's been going good. It's always a lot of work. You know, there's a lot of people that work here now, so it's a lot of shows to sort of keep track of.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of have, some great
questions to do with that and just, how GZM has evolved. I got,
a few short questions and,
most people, who are listening know who you are. But yeah, just that, I guess, extra background. So here we go.
I love asking this
question because I think it's great. I'm wondering what, if you remember what the first radio drama you listened to was, because I often have to explain what an audio drama is to people, and their minds always go to radio dramas. So what did that look like for you, and how has that inspired the podcast you make today?
Well, that's a good question. When I got into this, I didn't know a lot about audio dramas and stuff. So I was coming from a world where I was a professional musician for most of my life, and also a music producer, and doing music for film and TV and stuff. And but at the same time, I was also a writer. So for years and years and years, I was publishing short stories in literary magazines, and I had a couple books out, And so my music life and my story life were always kind of separate. And a lot of my musician friends didn't know that I was a published writer, and a lot of my writer friends didn't know that I was a professional musician. So I was always looking for ways to kind of bring those two together. And one of the ways was our first show when I met Ben and Dave, the other two co-founders of the company. Was Mars Patel, our first one. And I sort of taught. Now I had a lot of experience with sound design, not so much direct sound design, but a lot of mixing albums and producing albums, and writing music for TV and stuff. So I had all those skills kind of beforehand, and then it was just a matter of sort of learning how to put them into doing audio dramas, and that took a while to kind of learn and figure out.
Just from that,
sound design standpoint, considering that was, the first ever show you guys did, I think it's really impressive. I've played it for people who have listened to other, GZM shows, and they've never listened to Mars Patel. And, I think they're just absolutely impressed because,
it still,
sounds absolutely, amazing. And, it's just
great to listen to.
Thank you. Yeah, you can really hear the development of the show. Or of all of us, me, Ben, and Dave, because it was just the three of us back then. You can really hear the development over the first 4 episodes. If you listen to those first episode 1 to episode 4, and you can really hear us sort of hitting our stride. Because I think we took a break after we made the first 2 episodes. We took a little bit of a break, tried to figure out what we were going to do. Then we made the next ones, and in between there, we had really started to hone in on what we wanted stuff to sound like.
Yeah, absolutely. With, just Mars Patel, I guess that kind of brings me to my next question. After, deciding to fund the production of all the episodes of Mars Patel, did you feel like you were taking a big gamble? Because at the time, audio dramas were so uncommon, and still to this day, it's difficult to come across them unless you're already looking for one to listen to. So,
in a sense, did it feel kind of, a big decision?
Just deciding to make Mars Patel, knowing that you don't exactly know what the audience looks like.
Yeah, that's a great point. You hit the nail on the head. Back then, there's been a lot of sort of really good audio drama stuff that's happened in the podcast world since then, and it's gotten much, much bigger and much more popular. We call it like sort of audio fiction, so you could sort of break down podcasts into like talk podcasts or like fiction-based podcasts, right? So we did that, and then we realized like it was such early days. We were one of the first people kind of doing it in the podcast world. And so, we tried to actually get other people interested in the show and maybe put it out. We didn't know anything about kind of the industry at that point. And really, in order to do it was just moving forward.
Well, aside from podcasts, what's your favorite project you've ever worked on? Because I know you're an absolutely fantastic jazz musician and you've recorded, just great music with other artists. So what would that be?
There's so many. I think I've been really fortunate. I kind of got to play with all my heroes, like growing up as a kid in Canada and kind of very removed kind of from the New York jazz scene, as it were. I was really happy to be able to move to New York, and within about a year, I was playing with people that I had pictures of in my locker when I was in high school. Like I was just really, I knew all the people I wanted to play with, and I sort of set my sights on playing with them and got really lucky to be able to do so. So there's so many great recordings and so many great gigs and so many great tours and really fantastic moments of sort of realization of like, wow, like here I am in the biggest jazz city in the world playing with, one of my heroes, at any given time. So it's gone by quick, and so now, Gen Z is my main full-time focus now, but it's been a really crazy wild ride.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, to GZM now.
Where do you see yourself at GZM in a few years? Because in the last 5 years alone, GZM has grown so much, especially through, Rewind. You've gotten to speak with so many great people and, laugh every time. Also, are there any, different types of music you would like to make, for the shows you haven't already done?
Yeah, well, we have a show that I can't talk about yet, but it's just about ready to come out. Like you'll probably hear about it in the next few weeks. But it was a really amazing experience writing and creating music for this show. It was something that probably I never would have had a chance to do otherwise. So I think the interesting thing for me about GZM is like when we have a new show and we really think about a new show, I and Dave and Ben and I, we really come at it from like a what can we do musically here that might be different from anybody else. And so I think that's like a really fun part of our collaboration, but also like we're always trying to set our sights higher, right? To do better and to keep growing. So I think that's important. And not only growing as a company with people and the amount of work and all that stuff, which is sort of part of, running a company. But I think that, we really try, and at least I do, and Dave and Ben are super supportive when it comes to the music of just really trying to like go outside the box, like how can we make this sound? That story that I told you about having the music sound very original just because based on the place that I come from, which isn't typically the place that you come from when you're writing a lot for this kind of thing.
Yeah, well, last question. Now, I know you love music, but...
And, this kind of goes back to what we were talking about before. Where did your love of sound design come from? Because, I can totally relate. I love it too, but did that come from, a movie or some sort of audio? And, what inspired you to pursue sound design?
Well, I think that was sort of like a nice byproduct of that thing I told you about, where like in the beginning I didn't really know what I was doing. Right, I had done little bits of sound design stuff in sort of like a commercial sense. In other words, like making maybe doing some gigs for some advertising companies. You know what I mean? Where like you're making a little teaser logo that appears on screen, and it's got a couple of sound design things. And I had done some stuff in animation, little bits, but it's so much easier. Like the sound design in that kind of stuff is typically pretty direct. Like you see a ball bouncing, and so you hear a ball bouncing, right? So this is a whole other thing. And I think the thing that I've learned over the years about sound design is that really when it comes to our shows and when it comes to sort of good audio drama, is the idea of layering a whole bunch of sounds, right? Like really giving people the opportunity to not necessarily see exactly what you see, but to see something that keeps them engaged, keeps them understanding the story. I think that's the beauty of it, right? Is to sort of being able to hopefully do a good enough job where you can put a picture in somebody's head.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, I think, just everything that you're saying, it really just makes so much sense to me. It's, one of those things that you've, just picked up along the way. Just coming from a place of, loving music.
Yeah, well,
I got 10 clips today, and
Alright, here we go, clip 1. Hopefully it's a good loudness.
Cheeky lad. Is that all?
No. There are now internal records of another meeting that same day. A meeting between J.P. Whittier and 2 visitors, Cadence Cavendish and Brinley Pasternak.
Yeah. Right, and, I think this is exactly what Kady and Brinley didn't want to happen. For a while there, they were in the clear. Jude was under the assumption that they were in Berlin, but now he can, track them to, their exact location and maybe even interfere with their plot to break Cyrus out of Whittier Corp. So, yeah, I think, that scene is great. And, of course, since you're on the podcast, just that musical aspect, what'd you think of that? Of course, ahead, but, just from, listeners, perspective.
I think it's interesting. This is episode 28, so I think that there's a lot that happens in this episode. We switch locations and times and everything. It's moving around a lot, so it's a really, really cool episode in terms of you get a lot of everybody in this episode, right? I sort of just like to let it wash over me and think about, in terms of listening to any of the episodes when I especially when I go back and re-listen. I try not to think about it too much. I listen back differently to when I'm listening for giving notes and making changes and all that sort of stuff. So it was actually really nice to go back and well, this would be, since we just did 28 on Rewind a while ago, this would be my third listen of this in the last, just sitting back and listening. And it's really, 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 really fun. So I know I'm not saying anything specifically to that cue, but it's yeah.
I re-listen all the time, so, it's just that, same experience, but, when I go a while without listening, I still, just think back to, those older episodes and, how much 6 Minutes has, evolved since the start.
This isn't a conference room, it's an interrogation room.
Tomato, tomato. Thanks, we're good.
He'll be in soon.
Listen, we can't trust that Whittier guy.
Chris, I had to include that. Yeah.
Well, there I am in all my glory.
Chris, I thought that was great, and, I was listening through, and I was like, wait, that's Chris? So, I think it's great that I got to have you on this week because you're in this episode. Also, I was re-listening to Becoming Mother Nature, and I believe you had some lines in the first episode, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, even in that, right? And, of course, we hear a lot of Dave, but we also hear a lot of Chris, so, yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah, both Dave and I are in this episode a little bit, and I think because Dave plays Ivan, so I think that I do not consider myself an actor by any stretch, but I have over the years learned, and this was something that I wasn't that great at in the very beginning, was I become very, very good at hearing the pacing of acting and understanding how the acting works and doesn't work. From so many shows over so many years. So I think that's something that I'm really proud of, and it's just that it often comes out not quite as good out of my mouth.
I know him too.
What?
He was the old sad guy I told you about.
Which old sad guy?
The man who was waiting for me at the other end of the portal when I was 6. He's the man that brought me to Elixir Academy.
Yeah, wow. I was not expecting that, and, there are so many questions to be asked. For starters, did Dr. Whittier have, good intentions bringing Kady to Elixir Academy? Because we often see him as, a bad man. And also, what's so special about, Kady? Did Dr. Whittier, why would, Dr. Whittier go out of his way to bring her to the island? I mean, these are all great questions, and, it's really fun to hear people wonder about them. I think that's one of the things that I love about Rewind is listening to special guests and also just some people, people that write into the show. This has such a huge fan base now that, and I think one of my favorite things of all, for your listeners who haven't heard Rewind yet, if you're a fan of the show, it's just such a great way into the show, I think. But I think one of my favorite things, and I talk about this a lot on the show when Dave and I are doing recording sessions, Jess, our other co-host on the show,
it never listens ahead. She's only listening like when you guys are listening.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's definitely, interesting because, when I had Gabriella Scott on, she was more ahead, but, when I had Jess on, she hadn't listened ahead, so it was really, interesting for me as, she was just like, so, curious to see what was going to happen next. Like, she has, so many great questions, and, some of them
That she, asked in that episode that came to fruition.
We're going back to Elixir Key.
Why?
Because that's where Brinley and Kady and I fell into the portal in the first place. And, like you said, there's all kinds of electromagnetic activity around there.
I gotta point out the great sound design. I mean, it's fantastic. I also think, that a lot of what Cyrus is looking for lies within Elixir Key. Penn and Casey were able to get a hold of the bassinet, so I think at the very least, it will help them get some answers.
But at the same time, this interferes
with Brinley and Kady's plan because they think Cyrus is still at Whittier Corp, so I think, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's cool. And shout out to Anya, who is the person who works mostly on the show now and works, I sort of give like lots of notes and feedback, and she's become over the last the last season, it just takes a long time to learn somebody's style, right?
I think she, you guys do a great job, making sure that, it's not too distracting, whereas at the same time, instead, it adds value, and, just makes the show,
that much better.
My friend Casey and the others deserve a chance to be their own people. And so do you. Ready?
Ready.
Here goes!
Yeah, I mean, Cyrus brings up a great point. In the last episode, I mentioned that Angel was going through a very similar experience to Casey's. They weren't allowed to make, their own decisions, but I think, in a way, Angel,
has more to deal with. Her life, her whole life is being laid out for her, and she knows how it will turn out.
Angel said she's just a girl with a glitch, and I still think, that she thinks that in the back of her mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of great Angel stuff that's happened and a lot of great Angel stuff to come. So I think it's really an interesting, and she's such a great character. So yeah, it's really, really awesome. A lot of people that work on the show, and Dave is just so great. There's nobody better that I've ever seen that's able to keep so many balls in the air in terms of story-wise and keep them rolling and keep them interesting. So I think Angel's a real testament to that. He's just great at making sure that every character gets to develop and gets their shot. It's just, and whether that's a good character, good person character or bad person character, to say it in the most, layman's terms.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Thanks, but I'm not just talking about riding Bordeaux. It's all of it. Leaving here, going to some weird island.
It's gonna be great, Sam. I promise.
Yeah, I mean, I think Sam tries to keep her feelings to herself, which is why this scene is so great.
She doesn't want to make, River upset, but she also knows how much the Anders have supported them. I've said before that River is always thinking about the here and now, whereas Sam is always thinking ahead. So, yeah, I mean, I think both characters are great, but, there's something about Sam that, she just really, resembles Monica, and, I think that's just, just a great example of, how Dave and the team has, just done a great job writing, Sam as an interesting character.
We played around a lot with trying to figure out how to play them, like whether we get other actors to play them or whether, the actors for James and Monica play just do a lighter voice, or we try, or do we pitch them up a bit? We tried a whole bunch of stuff, and I'm really glad we went with, they just do such a great job of representing what James and Monica represent.
While Birdie and I are inside and Badger's circling on Mr. Board, we need someone in the van, in case things go wonky.
Like a getaway driver?
No. But maybe.
Yeah, this scene reminds me so much of the episode back in season 1 where James and Monica are getting ready to go on their date. Holiday is, kind of emotional, I guess, in a way. But yeah, I mean, I think, it's so great. So
it's a great callback. That's a really good callback on your part. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's too bad.
Olive pie!
What?
If Cyrus is working with you, then so can I. Plus, I was the CEO's right-hand woman.
It's an intriguing offer.
Chris, I mean, I love that music cue so much. It's definitely my top 3. But, aside from that,
I'm interested to see where things go from here because Tom Casiello,
who is, absolutely fantastic, posted a picture in September showing a picture of the outline to episode 32. And in that picture, you can barely just see the words curdling scream from Brinley. And, I'm interested
to know the meaning behind that when the time comes.
That is so awesome. That is so awesome. I love that the fans are that so committed that they're looking at the pictures of the script to like glean any bit of information they can. And it makes me so happy. I love it.
Is this a phone?
We don't really know.
Hello? Who is this?
Well, isn't this an interesting turn of events?
Oh, no.
This definitely goes back to what Jess was talking about when she was on.
And, just from a listener's standpoint, I think this is all, just so great. Yeah, well, hey, Chris, thank you so much for joining me on. I mean, joining me on the show. I mean, it really is such an honor, just hearing, how GZM has, evolved, and
it's just been so much fun for me.
Well, we love it. And that's such a nice, kind words. I really appreciate it. It means a lot. It means a lot that we have fans like yourself that are just so invested in the show, and it keeps us on our toes. And I love that you love the music and the sound design because we work so hard at it, and it's always really nice to hear when people are enjoying the. It's like me, like being a bass player, right? When people like love the music and they love the band and then they love the bass.
Until next time, this is Landon saying peace, love, and time travel.